Long before Hollywood studios became risk-averse, the pre-code era was a time when filmmakers gleefully poked holes in every sacred institution, including religion. These films didn't just question dogma, they lampooned sermons, lampooned pious authority figures, and skewered the rituals that millions held dear. It was a boldness that ignited nationwide fury and drew both record crowds and picket lines to theaters. In a time when blasphemy could spark riots, these 12 pre-code films openly mocked religion, turning clergy into punchlines, church-going into spectacle, and faith itself into the butt of the joke. Which of these movies would you dare to watch today? The Sign of the Cross, 1932. Cecil B. DeMille's The Sign of the Cross is the film that set a whole generation of religious critics on edge and sent waves of moral panic across the nation. Ostensibly a grand epic about the persecution of Christians in Nero's Rome, it quickly became infamous for its blend of pious suffering and over-the-top spectacle. What really sent censors into a tailspin wasn't just the hedonistic Roman feasts or the infamous milk bath scene. It was the sly way DeMille depicted early church leaders as all too human, riddled with doubt, and often buffoonish in the face of Rome's excesses. The film's tone is what made it so scandalous. Rather than treating martyrdom and faith with unwavering reverence, The Sign of the Cross peppers its script with subtle jabs and ironic asides. The Christian characters may suffer heroically, but their leaders frequently appear outmaneuvered or outright clueless. Meanwhile, the pagan Romans, though monstrous in their decadence, are allowed a kind of comedic flair that feels intentionally mocking toward the seriousness of religious dogma. Audiences got the message. DeMille wasn't here to offer a Sunday school lesson. Religious groups and clergy were swift and merciless in their condemnation. Editorials labeled the film a sacrilegious pageant, and many cities and states tried to ban or heavily edit screenings. Church-led protests erupted in places like Boston, Chicago, and Philadelphia, where priests denounced DeMille's irresponsible lampooning of sacred events. The controversy did nothing to dampen curiosity. If anything, it packed theaters even more. Ironically, DeMille claimed he was honoring faith and showing the endurance of belief under fire. But for many, The Sign of the Cross was less a work of devotion than a carnival of irreverence. A film that used spectacle and sly wit to turn religious history into something at once grand, ridiculous, and subversively entertaining. The Miracle Woman, 1931. Frank Capra's The Miracle Woman was the first mainstream film to expose the underbelly of revivalist Christianity, and it did so with a mix of razor-sharp satire and surprising emotional depth. Barbara Stanwyck's Florence Fallon is the daughter of a devout preacher whose sudden death at the hands of a callous congregation turns her into a cynic almost overnight. Bitter and disillusioned, she teams up with a fast-talking showman to create a traveling tent ministry, complete with fake miracles, phony healings, and the kind of theatrical sermons that would make Elmer Gantry blush. Capra pulls no punches in his depiction of religious showmanship. The audience gets to see behind the scenes how miracles are manufactured, from planted testimonies to staged collapses and sudden cures. Florence, initially just playing along for the money, becomes a master of the con, manipulating the crowd with fiery rhetoric and fake tears. The result is a relentless lampooning of religious spectacle. The pious are gullible, the clergy are greedy, and faith is just another form of stagecraft. What made The Miracle Woman especially controversial was the way it flipped the usual Hollywood script. Here, the faithful are not rewarded for their trust, but fleeced. The revival tent isn't a house of worship, but a literal circus. Censors in multiple states demanded cuts, and religious leaders denounced the film as a dangerous attack on Christianity's foundations. Some churches threatened boycotts, and several local boards tried to block screenings altogether. Yet, Capra's film isn't all cynicism. Stanwyck's performance brings real pathos to Florence's journey, and the script ultimately asks if faith, stripped of spectacle and hypocrisy, can still offer redemption. Even so, for many, The Miracle Woman was less a parable and more a shot across the bow of American religious tradition, skewering revivalism with a blend of outrage and sharp comic timing. Rain, 1932. Based on W. Somerset Maugham's notorious play, Rain became the lightning rod for debates about religion and morality. in the early 1930s. Joan Crawford's Sadie Thompson is a bold, brash woman stranded in Samoa, whose arrival at a remote outpost throws a group of missionaries, including the humorless Mr. Davidson, into chaos. As Davidson mounts a crusade to save Sadie's soul, the film gleefully mocks his sanctimony and shows the ease with which moral authority can shade into obsession and cruelty. What sets Rain apart is its willingness to use religion as both a plot device and a source of black comedy. Davidson's endless prayers and sermons become increasingly ridiculous as Sadie parries his lectures with wit and withering sarcasm. He insists he's acting out of concern for her spirit, but it's clear to the audience, and eventually to Sadie herself, that his real motivation is something much darker and more hypocritical. Audiences at the time were shocked by the film's portrayal of missionary zeal as a kind of fanaticism, with faith wielded as a weapon rather than a comfort. Some reviewers applauded Rain's bravery. Others demanded it be pulled from screens for deliberately ridiculing sacred vocations. Religious groups, especially in the South, denounced the film and tried to organize bans. Yet, Rain's popularity only grew as moviegoers flocked to see Crawford's fiery performance and the film's unapologetic satire of religious hypocrisy. In the end, Rain left an indelible mark on Hollywood, demonstrating that sometimes the most dangerous vice of all is a faith that takes itself too seriously. The Half-Naked Truth, 1932. The Half-Naked Truth takes religious satire and runs with it, right into the heart of American entertainment culture. Lee Tracy stars as Jimmy Bates, a carnival pitchman whose latest scheme is to turn his girlfriend into Princess Exotica, a supposed mystic who can heal prophecy and perform wonders. Jimmy's real trick? Using every cliché of revivalist speech, gospel music, and miracle promises to whip crowds into a frenzy and pack his tent with cash. The film pulls back the curtain on religious spectacle, revealing the mechanics of manufactured faith. There are scenes of frantic townsfolk fainting, dancing, and testifying, all orchestrated by Jimmy's relentless showmanship. When the tent show hits New York, the script ratchets up the mockery. What began as small-town revival becomes big-city mass hysteria, with politicians and clergy joining the fray for their own slice of the action. Censors tried, and mostly failed, to tone down the film's irreverence, but it was the religious satire that stuck in the public's craw. Critics accused Hollywood of cheapening the church, and several towns banned the film for blasphemous humor. Audiences, however, loved the spectacle. The Half-Naked Truth was a surprise hit, its laughter serving as a release valve in an era of anxiety and doubt. The film's genius is that it never apologizes for its mockery. Faith is just another costume, another act to be sold, bought, and discarded. In exposing the business behind belief, The Half-Naked Truth stands as a rollicking and devastating commentary on American gullibility and the art of the religious con. I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, 1932. While best known as a powerful indictment of America's prison system, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang also takes direct aim at the way religion can be co-opted by those in power. Paul Mooney's James Allen is a man destroyed not only by law and order, but by the pious language of judges, wardens, and chaplains who use faith as a cudgel. Sermons are recited over the sound of breaking spirits and breaking bones, and hope is always delivered with a side of hypocrisy. The film's most biting moments come in the prison chapel, where Allen is subjected to lectures about sin, repentance, and obedience, all while the audience sees the brutality and corruption beneath the surface. The chaplains, far from offering real comfort, become tools of control, their prayers recited by rote, and their sermons used to shame rather than uplift. The script even uses biblical references as punchlines, with Allen's resistance to redemption played for both drama and irony. Religious leaders were quick to notice. In several states, the film was edited to remove or soften its most satirical scenes, and some churches advised parishioners to avoid it altogether. Critics noted that, for all its realism, the movie's most subversive act was to question whether faith, when tied to power, could be anything but another chain. Yet, for many viewers, the film's message rang true. The supposed comfort of religion is revealed as just another layer of the prison walls, and Allen's escape is as much from piety as from iron bars. I am a fugitive from a chain gang didn't just change the way America viewed its justice system. It dared to mock the role of faith within it. Duck Soup, 1933. The Marx Brothers' Duck Soup is the atomic bomb of cinematic mockery, leaving no institution, least of all religion, standing. In the imaginary country of Fredonia, Groucho Marx's Rufus T. Firefly upends every custom, mocks every ceremony, and turns even the most sacred rituals into farce. Religious pageantry is stripped of meaning, replaced with slapstick, silly chants, and absurd blessings delivered with a leer and a wink. Duck Soup doesn't target any one faith, but instead lampoons the very idea of reverence and ritual. From faux prayer meetings where chaos reigns to processions and public prayers that devolve into bedlam, the film turns sacred symbolism into fodder for laughter. At one point, Harpo and Chico stage an entire sermon as a series of comic misunderstandings, delighting the audience and infuriating censors. The uproar was immediate. Clergy and critics alike complained that Duck Soup had no respect for anything, and that in particular, its attacks on sacred ceremony would lead the nation's youth astray. Studios faced pressure to rein in the Marx Brothers, but their comedy was already an unstoppable force. Duck Soup's relentless pace made it impossible for censors to isolate just one offending scene. The whole film is a wall-to-wall lampoon. The result? Box office gold and a reputation that has only grown with time. Today, Duck Soup is hailed as one of the greatest comedies ever made, a movie that proved the best way to challenge sacred cows is with a banana peel and a horn. The Bitter Tea of General Yen, 1933. Frank Capra's The Bitter Tea of General Yen is remembered for its bold visual style and taboo romance, but underneath its melodrama lies a sly, persistent mockery of missionary arrogance and Western religious certainty. Barbara Stanwyck's Megan Davis is a missionary whose faith is treated less as spiritual truth and more as a well-meaning delusion, one that crumbles under the weight of reality. From the start, Capra makes it clear that Megan's confidence in her mission is naive. Her attempts to convert General Yen and his followers are met with bemused tolerance, then open amusement. The film's dialogue skewers the idea that American faith can simply be exported to a war-torn China. Megan's sermons and prayers come off as either tone-deaf or hopelessly out of touch. The movie walks a careful line, but it's clear that Capra's sympathies lie with Yen's skepticism rather than Megan's piety. Scenes of attempted conversion are played for irony, and by the film's end, Megan's worldview is thoroughly dismantled, not by persecution, but by the quiet, steady erosion of her own assumptions. Religious organizations in the U.S. called the film subversive and deeply cynical, with some denouncing it as anti-missionary propaganda. Capra defended his film as realistic, but audiences saw through the polite language to the sharp satire beneath. The Bitter Tea of General Yen remains a fascinating portrait of faith unmoored, a movie that mocks not just religion, but the arrogance that so often goes with it. The Miracle Man, 1932, Remake. The 1932 remake of The Miracle Man is a lost classic of religious mockery. The plot follows a gang of small-time crooks who discover an ailing miracle man and conspire to turn his faith healing into a profitable circus. Through staged miracles, coached converts, and elaborate showmanship, they draw huge crowds and make fools of the faithful. The film goes further than simple satire. Each miracle is dissected for the audience. Wires and props behind the pulpit, whispered instructions, and even planted cripples who leap from their wheelchairs on cue. The entire religious experience is exposed as theater, and the crowd's frenzied reactions are filmed with an edge of both awe and ridicule. Censors and church leaders saw red. The film was denounced from pulpits, and in some states, it was banned for mocking the foundations of belief. But audiences were mesmerized by the behind-the-scenes look at religious trickery, and the movie became a talking point in debates about faith versus show business. Ironically, The Miracle Man ends with a note of possible redemption for the real Miracle Man. But by then, the damage is done. The film's lasting legacy is its unflinching look at the ease with which hope can be exploited, and faith turned into an act for the paying crowd. This Day and Age, 1933. This Day and Age is DeMille's lesser-known but no less audacious assault on the institutions of his era. When a gangster murders a beloved teacher, the city's adults, including priests, ministers, and rabbis, are paralyzed by indecision, mouthing pieties but failing to act. It falls to a group of high school students to bring justice, and they do so with a mix of vigilante determination and tongue-in-cheek bravado. The film skewers clergy at every turn. Scenes in churches and temples are staged with grand seriousness, only to be revealed as empty gestures, outpaced by the real world's chaos. Sermons are recited while violence unfolds just outside the sanctuary doors, and when the students seek guidance, the religious leaders offer little more than platitudes. Critics called the film subversive and dangerously disrespectful to the clergy, while church groups debated boycotts. But DeMille's point was clear: faith without action is little more than theater, and pious language is no substitute for courage. By making religion just another ineffectual bureaucracy, this day and age openly mocked the idea that prayer alone can change a corrupt world. For audiences, the message was bracing, and for many, long overdue. The film's irreverence is now part of its cult appeal, and its sharp commentary on empty ritual remains as biting today as it was in 1933. The Mouthpiece, 1932. The Mouthpiece is a courtroom drama with a wicked sense of humor, turning the language of faith into a weapon of cross-examination. Warren Williams' attorney, Vince Day, is a master of manipulation, twisting religious references, quoting scripture out of context, and mocking the supposed moral certitude of judges, prosecutors, and witnesses alike. In the film's most infamous scenes, Day uses appeals to divine justice and the higher law to sway juries and ridicule his opponent's piety. Judges who invoke faith are revealed as hypocrites, while witnesses' sworn oaths become fodder for Day's wit. The result is a kind of legal satire, in which every pious phrase is turned upside down. Religious organizations protested the film, arguing that it encouraged audiences to laugh at the very idea of faith-based morality. Critics debated whether the movie was merely cynical, or whether it struck a necessary blow against sanctimonious posturing in public life. What's clear is that The Mouthpiece left its mark. By making a mockery of sacred language, the film forced audiences to confront the gap between moral rhetoric and real-world behavior. In the courtroom of Vince Day, nothing, not even religion, is safe from cross-examination. The Devil is Driving, 1932. The Devil is Driving approaches religious satire with a uniquely dark comedic sensibility. Edmund Lowe plays Gabby, a small-time mechanic whose descent into the criminal underworld is matched only by his skepticism toward the church-going folk around him. Ministers in the film are depicted as kind but oblivious, their sermons greeted with sarcasm or outright laughter by a congregation more interested in the goings-on at the local speakeasy. The film's central gag is that everyone, saint and sinner alike, is compromised. When Gabby finds himself cornered by both the police and the pulpit, he discovers that salvation is as much about timing as about faith. Church leaders, instead of offering real help, are portrayed as clueless or willfully blind to the realities of Depression-era life. Censors debated whether the film was dangerously flippant, and some cities cut scenes that lampooned church rituals. But for many viewers, The Devil is Driving was a refreshing change. A comedy that treated faith as just another part of the messy, compromised world of human beings. The film's legacy is its refusal to let religion off the hook. By mocking both vice and virtue, The Devil is Driving paints a world where everyone is flawed, and where a good laugh is sometimes more honest than a sermon. Employee's Entrance, 1933. At first glance, Employee's Entrance looks like a sharp-edged business drama, but dig deeper, and you'll find a scathing satire of religious platitudes and the hypocrisy of respectable society. Warren Williams' ruthless department store manager, Kurt Anderson, dismisses all talk of morality and faith as irrelevant to the pursuit of profit. When clergymen and charity workers appear, they're treated as obstacles, or worse, as accessories to the store's cutthroat culture. The film's boardroom prayers and morality talks are depicted as hollow rituals, quickly forgotten as soon as real decisions need to be made. When employees turn to faith in moments of crisis, the script undercuts them with irony and dark humor, showing that survival, rather than virtue, is the only rule that matters. Religious leaders condemned the film for making a mockery of sacred institutions, and some called for a boycott of theaters showing it. Audiences, however, recognized the satire. In the depths of the Great Depression, piety alone wasn't enough to save a job or a life. Employees' Entrance remains a bracing, unflinching look at the way faith is used and abused in the corridors of power. Its message is clear. In the real world, empty rituals are no match for ruthless ambition. The result is a film as funny as it is unsettling, a dark mirror held up to society's most sacred lies. From fake miracles to blundering ministers, these 12 pre-code films didn't just challenge religious authority. They tore it to shreds, exposing hypocrisy, greed, and human frailty with wit as sharp as a razor. The outrage they stirred up only fueled their success, proving that laughter and irreverence are powerful weapons against dogma. Nearly a century later, their courage in poking fun at the untouchable remains unmatched. Would you dare watch these films today? Or do you think Hollywood has lost its edge? Let us know in the comments below. If you're hooked on hidden Hollywood history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. There are plenty more stories censors tried to keep in the dark.